The hippie movement of the 1960s was supposed to be about peace, love, and harmony. But through the eyes of Gabrielle Wheeler, it was about neglect, abandonment, and self-destruction.
I was very separated from my mom. I didn't have a bond with her, so it was very, very interesting. It was kind of like growing up with a stranger.
Gabrielle grew up in a commune in Las Cruces, New Mexico. She was often left alone to play with bags of marijuana and rolling papers, while her mom read tarot cards and did drugs. There were many men in her mom's life, and Gabrielle never knew which one might be her father. Eventually, her mom married, but he beat them. Her mom left him for someone who beat them even more.
I remember being depressed since I was young, even at the age of about 9 or 10, just wanting to not live anymore because I just felt like there was a lot of darkness in my life.
Gabrielle said there was a light in the nightmarish existence. It came on Sundays when some people gave her rides to church.
The first Bible story that I ever heard was a story about Job. They said he was the man of many afflictions, but in the end, how God had blessed his life. And I remember hearing that story and saying, you know what, God, maybe my life is going to be hard when I'm young, but if you could make it good when I'm older. I remember praying that prayer.
And Gabrielle believed her only chance was to get away. At 14, she told her mother she wanted to move to California and live with some relatives. Her mom gave little resistance.
I was so determined not to be like my mom. I was so determined to be completely different. And I said I was never going to let a man beat me. I was never going to do drugs like my mom or anybody. I was going to be a good girl, but I didn't know how to be.
But escaping the influences of her past wasn't so easy, as she learned when she started going to church with neighbors.
They didn't know what to do with me because I had a crush on all my youth pastors. I mean, I was just a mess. And one day I walked into the church and it was like the devil just spoke to me like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. All the people are perfect and, they have 2 parents and you come from this broken home. What are you doing here? And I looked around and I realized, you know what? You're right. What am I doing here? I don't belong here.
Gabrielle stopped going to church. Then at 18, she moved out on her own. One day while driving through New Mexico, she looked up a man she had been told was her dad. He couldn't give her the answer she hoped for.
He says, well, your mom was just very promiscuous, and so I just don't know if you're mine. All I can say is when he said those words to me, he might as well have just stamped me with the word rejection. And right after that time, I just said, if I can't beat them, I might as well join them.
From that point on, Gabrielle did everything she swore she'd never do, which included having an abusive boyfriend.
Exactly like my mother and worse. I was homeless for a year. I just hitchhiked up and down the coast of California and I finally ended up at the Haight-Ashbury.
There, in this San Francisco neighborhood, Gabrielle says she was constantly reminded of God.
And I remember in the Haight-Ashbury, there would actually be these groups of people that would come and witness to us, but I would actually laugh at them.
One day, after taking several drugs, she started to lose consciousness.
I know God was speaking to my heart that I needed to turn my life around and give it to him. That day I had done different drugs just to numb the pain. And then the room just got very quiet, and then all 3 of the walls started to turn black, and an evil presence entered into the room. And I saw my spirit start to leave my body. I screamed out, Jesus, save me, and my spirit smacked back into my body.
Terrified by the experience, Gabrielle came to the conclusion that hell was real, and so was Jesus. The only people she knew could help her were the neighbors she went to church with when she was a teenager.
And they said, well, what do you want us to do for you? And I said, get me a bus ticket. I want to come back to the church and back to God.
Gabrielle moved in with her friends. They convinced her to surrender herself to police for outstanding drug possession charges. In jail, she started reading the Bible and learned what it meant to trust Jesus.
The Lord dealt with me when I was in jail, talked to me about surrendering your life and about making him the Lord of your life and completely turning over everything to him.
After serving a short sentence, Gabrielle went into Teen Challenge. It was there that she learned how to let go of all the pain and rejection.
There was a night where God spoke to me. He said, you need to forgive your mother. And when he did that, I forgave her, a flood of tears just came over my eyes, and I had cried like I had never cried in my whole life.
No longer haunted by her past, Gabrielle says her life is full. She's married to John, a pastor, and they have 4 daughters. Gabrielle reaches out to young girls in crisis who are much like she was. She has hope for them because of what God did for her.
God has become my father, and he has taken care of me, and he has provided for me. Today, I know that God is real because he saved me as I was dying, and no one can convince me otherwise.